wife Julie and I own this SNJ that you see behind me. The SNJ is a training plane from World War II, and every Allied pilot was trained on this aircraft. It's a big, powerful airplane. It was built in 1943, and it's a restoration of that plane in its authentic form, paint job, and inner workings. It's a beautiful restoration. When I was 10 years old, my father had an airplane, and there was an old abandoned SNJ, an old Hulk of an SNJ like this plane, sitting out behind its hangar. I spent many, many, many pleasant afternoons whiling away my time playing in that airplane. I love that airplane. In those days, I came to love airplanes, and they were just such a part of my life. I built airplane models, I looked at airplanes, I collected airplane pictures, and it just became part of me. So when I finished college, I joined the Navy and entered flight training, and fortunately became a Navy pilot. And I flew off carriers and spent years flying for the Navy as a carrier pilot. And after I got out of the Navy, I owned several airplanes. I've always owned airplanes and flew them. But always, 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 in the back of my mind was this airplane. It was a dream. I wanted to go back to this airplane. My goal was to rebuild that plane of my childhood, what it represented to me, the incredible amount of joy and fun I had playing that airplane. I wanted to recreate that. And one day, I'd flown my plane into this field here, Brown Field, and I had a Cessna at that time. I flew in here, and I happened to see all these plane parts gathered in a field next to the airport. And so I went over there, and they were all SNJ parts, and that was it. From that time forward, I was going to build one, and I did. First of all, I had to get the pieces. So for a period of about 20 years, I collected parts and pieces. My goal in this airplane was to build a perfect airplane, as restored as fully and completely as possible. And so I wanted to have nothing but the best. And so I tried to collect over a long period of time every single part and piece I needed to build this airplane. But I always selected parts and pieces that were unflown, zero-time, brand new parts. Hard to find. But for years I searched for them. And finally, at one point, I had collected basically everything I needed to build an airplane. Every single rivet in this airplane was restored and replaced. Every skin was replaced. Every single piece, even though they were zero-time parts, fully restored, completed before they were ever assembled. So when we finally came to assembling this airplane, we had thousands and thousands of brand new, repaired, restored parts. I made an agreement with Dave Bieber, who was my project manager, and I only gave him one rule, and that was never, under any circumstances, cut corners. Everything must be done as perfectly as is humanly possible on this airplane, regardless of cost and funds and manpower. It took me 30 years to build this airplane. 20 years of collecting, 10 years of building. The aircraft eventually, after this long effort, was finished. It was finished in early 2014, and we flew the airplane for the first time in April of 2014. It flew like a charm. It was absolutely beautiful. We then, there's several major air shows that we want to enter into and compete. And one being, of course, the holy grail of all aviation air shows, which is Oshkosh. Oshkosh Air Show in Wisconsin is the goal of every single pilot who restores aircraft like this in the world. We won pretty much everything that we were eligible for. We won the Judges Appreciation Award. We won the Phoenix Award. The Phoenix Award is an award given to the plane that most typifies rising from the ashes, like the Phoenix bird. and this plane certainly met that, because when it started, it was just a pile of parts. We won a award called the Keep 'em Flying Award. This is a grand champion equivalent award, and then we won the real holy grail of every aircraft restorer in the world. And that's the Gold Wrench Award at Oshkosh. We were very rewarded to find the airplane published in many articles in aviation magazines. 4 major articles were published in our aviation magazines that deal with restoration of old airplanes. Those articles are all duplicated in our website. We had a great crew. These guys are artisans. And it was my project manager, as I mentioned, was Dave Bieber of Paladin Aircraft Restoration. We gathered a group of guys that were artisans. There's no other way to describe it. They were artists in working with metal and working with airframes, engines, and they did, just a remarkable job. All of their names are now engraved on a stainless steel plaque on the cowl of the airplane, and they will always stay there. I flew in an attack squadron 97 in the Navy in the Vietnam War. I wanted this aircraft at some level to honor those men who flew with such honor and integrity. And so I put several markings on the plane that indicate that. There's a marking that indicates VA 97, Attack Squadron 97. We flew off the USS Constellation, an aircraft carrier, that's mentioned, and we were part of Carrier Air Group 14, which is KAG 14. Now, these were, of course, from a different era. This is a World War II aircraft. Those markings are from a Vietnam era aircraft. And so there's a certain disconnect there, but it's important to me, and it was worth that in terms of authenticity. There's another marking on the airplane that represents something very important to me, and that's the number 59 on the side. People say, what is that? And I tell them it's the most significant year in the 20th century. It's the year my darling wife was born. My plan for the aircraft is, at some point, is to release it to someone else, to let it find a new home. There's a reason for that. And plane guys know what the reason is. And that reason is, there's a new project on the horizon. And I would like to get started with it. The plane is deeply personal to me. It's deeply personal to Julie. She named it Sweet Pea. It's like a family member. And I remember when the plane flew to Oshkosh, I didn't fly in the plane. We had a couple of our pilots that flew the airplane to Oshkosh. And as it came over a house and dipped its wings and headed east over the mountains, my wife said, Julie, my wife said, I feel like one of our children is leaving home. So that's what it means to me. But I want it to live on, and I want it to continue to be a source of inspiration to people and a source of beauty. And I know that people who see it appreciate it so much, especially the old vets that have flown the aircraft. We've had many of them that we've had sit up in the aircraft, and they flew it years and years back in the war years. So it's a deeply personal plane to us. To whoever owns the airplane, this is a piece of history. It's a piece of me. It's a piece of all of us. And it represents an era and a time for which we all should be incredibly proud. And this aircraft, to me, that represents that. And I hope that it represents that to whoever buys the airplane. It will. Because I will not sell it to someone who doesn't appreciate it.